Okay. Pittsburgh. So I've been talking about goaltenders and going through different teams. I want to start keeping a list of which teams I've done and which teams I haven't yet. Because again, I'm really getting ready for that big epic Vegas video where I talk about their goaltending. Um, Now, again, to be on this list, a goaltender has to have played 20 or more games for the team that season. So if they didn't, I didn't list them. And that's to prevent it just from being just this mess of names, which it already kind of is at 50 seasons. But trying to prevent that and make it so that we can come out with some kind of a standard so we can say, okay, this team's gone through a lot of goaltenders. And I need to start having that data written down too. So I'm going to get on that too. So that at the end of this series, I can take a look and go, okay, this might be the goalie graveyard of the NHL. That's the end goal, is to say the actual goalie graveyard of the NHL is, and then insert name of team here. And it will be overall as well as since the year 2000. So there you go. And it's only since 67, 68, so since expansion. That said, let's get into it. Binkley and Basson are your goaltenders for Pittsburgh the first year. Binkley's the starter again in year 2 with Daly as the backup. In their third year, they bring in Al Smith. Al Smith's the starter. Binkley's the backup. Smith remains with Binkley in 70-71. And 71-72, Jim Rutherford is the starter with Binkley as the backup. So Rutherford, who had a pretty decent career as a goaltender, comes in and plays starter for a team that's kind of in a miserable phase of their careers. 72-73, Rutherford plays 49 games. He's the only one to hit 20 games overall. 73-74, Rutherford's the second guy on the list behind Brown, and Innes is number 3. So Rutherford's out, and 74-75, it's Innes, and Michel Plas is there. 75-76, Michel Plas is the starter, Innes is the backup. So we've already started going through a lot of starters, and this has to do with the fact that Pittsburgh can't quite get over that hump, and it's an issue they're going to have numerous times throughout their existence, and then they're saved by Lemieux, and then they're saved by Crosby. 76-77, Dunk Wilson comes in, plays starter minutes with Denny Herron as the backup. Herron's the starter, Wilson the backup in 77-78, and then Greg Millen joins the team in 78-79 with Herron as the starter. So Denny Herron had a solid career and unfortunately spent a number of seasons with some pretty bad Pittsburgh teams. 79-80, Millen's the starter with Holland as the backup, and in 80-81, Greg Millen plays 63 games that season, and Millen would play for some pretty rough, bad teams. And I'm looking at Hartford, I'm looking at Quebec, I'm looking at even Chicago. Like Millen played behind some pretty poor defenses, and his numbers for his career aren't great. I need to do a video on Greg Millen at some point and discuss that, because Millen's one of those guys who he did bounce around the league, and yet he never really played. As far as I can remember, I can't remember Millen playing on a contending team. But 81-82, Millen doesn't play 20 games. Dion does, and Dion, with those 62 games, is the only one to reach 20. Dion in 82-83 is still the starter. Herron is back as the backup, and Herron plays in 83-84 the most minutes with Dion as the backup. So with Herron here, again, Pittsburgh has solid goaltending, but they don't have much else. 84-85, Herron is the starter. Roberto Romano, the backup. Romano, one of the best names in the history of the game. I was a huge Roberto Romano fan, even if he didn't play very long. He wasn't necessarily a great goaltender, and I don't remember having a hockey card of his. I can't remember having a hockey card of his. 85-86, Romano and Meloche. So Joe Meloche, as a reward for having to play behind some bad teams in his career in California and Cleveland, he ends up in Pittsburgh. But things are getting better for Pittsburgh because of Mario. So 87-88, Meloche is the starter, and Frank Pietrangelo is the backup. And there's Pat Riggin, number 3 on the list. Riggin's another goaltender that I liked. 88-89, Barrasso is your starter, and Young the backup. So Wendell Young out of Vancouver into Pittsburgh, and he played relatively well in Pittsburgh. In fact, in 89-90, he plays starter minutes with Barrasso as the backup, and there's Frank Pietrangelo again. The number 3 goaltender to reach 20 games. 90-91 is Barrasso and Pietrangelo. 91-92, Barrasso's your starter. plays 57 games. So it's easy to forget that Barrasso played a long time in Pittsburgh. He actually really did. 92-93, Barrasso and Reget. 93-94, Barrasso and Reget. 94-95, Reget plays 38 games during the lockout shortened season of 94-95. And he played well. He did. It's easy to forget, too, that Reget was actually a pretty solid goaltender. 95-96, Barrasso's in there as the starter with Reget as the backup. So this is the most consistent duo that Pittsburgh ever had, spending 3 years together, altogether. 96-97, Reget's your starter, Lalim's your backup. Barrasso is then back into it in 97-98, plays 63 games that year. Nobody else reaches 20. 98-99, Barrasso and Skudra. So there's Peter Skudra, who then in 99-2000 is backing up Jean-Sebastien Aubin. Aubin's your starter in 2000-2001 with Garth Snow as the backup. Hedberg is your starter in 01-02 with Aubin as the backup. Hedberg's your starter in 02-03 with Caron and Aubin as the backups. 03-04, Caron plays starter minutes with Fleury now on the board and Aubin still there as the number 3. So a lot of seasons in Pittsburgh's 50 years where we see 3 goaltenders play 20 or more games. And that does kind of skew the numbers at the end of this. 04-05, of course, is a wiped out season, so we go to 05-06. Fleury and Caron are your goaltenders. 06-07 is Fleury and Jocelyn Thibault. Thibault played around through a few teams. We'll see him on this. I think there's 4 different teams he played for. 07-08, Conklin, Fleury, and Sabourin. 08-09, Marc-Andre Fleury plays 62 games. He's the only one to play 20 or more that year. 2009-2010, it's Fleury and Johnson. 2010-2011, it's Fleury and Johnson again. 2011-2012, Marc-Andre Fleury plays 67 games. The workhorse. 2012-2013, Fleury and Vaucoon. 2013-14, Fleury and Zatkov. 2014-15, Fleury and Grice. 2015-16, Fleury plays 58 games that year. So Fleury plays a long time as a starter. 2016-17, Matt Murray gets starter minutes. Fleury, of course, had injury problems that season. 2017-18, Murray is now your starter with Jarry as the backup. Jarry's the only one who got 20 games. Yes, DeSmith played this year, but he didn't reach 20 games played. So Fleury, in his time as a starter, goes through the following backups. Caron, Thibault. This season, of course, injury issues here. Johnson, so you could say Conklin or Sabourin there. Johnson, Vaucoon, Zatkov, Grice, and technically Matt Murray. Technically. But altogether, they went through 36 goaltenders, and they've gone through 15 since the year 2000. But again, it's kind of misleading because most of that is backups. Marc-Andre Fleury, 13 years as a Pittsburgh goalie of 20 or more games. Aubin had 5 years. Reget had 5 years. Barrasso had 9. So Tom Barrasso with 9 seasons. Denny Herron had 6. And Binkley, at the start of all this, 5 years. So they went through a lot of goaltenders. But in terms of starters, the key guys they're building around, Barrasso 9 years, Fleury 13. That's 22 years of their existence between 2 goaltenders. And that's kind of how it should work. That you should have some faith in your starter, and you should keep him around for a while. So there you go. And with all the Stanley Cups they've won, which currently totals 5, Pittsburgh kind of knows what they're doing. Yes, every now and then they go through a disastrous apocalypse of a season, and attendance is down, and somebody talks about moving the team. But in the end, they turn it around, and then they win. So there you go. The goaltending history of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, just happened upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.